You join me today at Crazy Horse Farmhouse on the eastern side of the Cotswolds. Beautiful location, loads of good roads around here, and it's a bit of a dream job kind of day. We've got the new 2021 MV Agusta Brutale 800 RR, and then I've got the Dragster as well. Very similar bikes, but there are a few differences to go through, and I thought I'd do the honourable thing and take them both for a spin, tell you all about them. Now, I won't go on too much in this intro because the sun's shining and I just want to get out and ride, but on first impressions, I think I'm going to like the Dragster more, so I'm going to build up to it by taking the Brutale first. Oh my god, man, this thing is ridiculous. I remember last time I borrowed one, I was a bit surprised perhaps. I thought because it was an 800 and a triple, it'd be sort of mid-rangey and, you know, not super ridiculously lively, but it really revs up. You can see here it's about 13,000 RPM, the red line, and the power really does come on at about 9,000 revs, and it will just launch that front end into the sky, as I found out when I tested the last one a couple of years back. So yeah, with all those revs, it makes around 140, I think a little more, 140 something horsepower, which is plenty for such a light little bike. Now for this 2021 update, MV are beholden to the same rules as everyone else regarding emissions. So Euro 5 emissions regulations are slightly stricter, meaning that they have to bulk out the exhaust, fit something a little cleaner in order to be able to keep selling it. And now you'd imagine with a more restrictive exhaust that you'd lose some power, but they've actually used some DLC or diamond-like coating, which is like a really low friction coating on some of the engine internals. So they've reduced the friction, which has kind of offset the new exhaust, I guess, and they've maintained the same peak power and peak torque figures, which is a good thing indeed, because it's absolutely the party piece of this bike. Oh my gosh. It's addictive, honestly. Now they also say that there's slightly better handling this year owing to some redesigned plates on the side of the swing arm pivots. They say they've given it a little more torsional rigidity and longitudinal rigidity. Now it's a couple of years since I've ridden the previous gen and I'm not noticing any sort of night and day difference. But I will say it is a bike that certainly handles. At the same time, they've also sought to improve comfort a little bit. The previous gen was a pretty firm bike, so this year they fitted a progressive linkage on the shock, so it should be a bit more cushy in the first part of its travel. And then also they fitted some more padding to the seat and rounded off the edges so that they're not quite so harsh. And certainly having ridden the Super Veloce recently, and I remember the F3, those are pretty focused and sporty bikes, and certainly the Brutale 800, of all the bikes in their lineup, it's the one that you could probably get on with day in, day out. That's not to say it's tame, it's ridiculous, and it still feels taut and very lightweight and agile, and it's a sporty bike. But yeah, you could probably just about get away with commuting on it if you were inclined to buy a 15 grand bike to do so. Now, both bikes have also had a decent boost in tech this year. The previous generation, you know, LCD displays are starting to look a little bit dated now, especially when you're paying 15 or 17 grand. So this year they get the 5-inch TFT display that you see on some of the other MVs, and it really is pretty good. It's got a nice feel and design to it, nice and easy to navigate, and they've redesigned the switchgear to incorporate some extra buttons for it. As you'd expect, it's got Bluetooth connectivity, so you can pair it with a phone, pair it with a headset, and that opens up navigation prompts, media playback, call and message handling. The other big update is that both of them now get an inertial measurement unit. That gives you lean sensitive rider aids, and it's pretty much got the works now. So cornering ABS and traction control, better wheelie control that can maintain a wheelie because it knows what the angle of the bike is rather than just slamming it back down. And then you've got launch control, cruise control, you've got the cornering headlight too, and that's basically everything you need from a sporty naked in 2021. Anyway, I think it's time to get on the Dragster. Now you might notice that it says parking brake on the dash there. That's because this one is the smart clutch system, SCS, so it's got a recluse clutch in it. As a result, you can't leave it in gear. Like this car park's a bit steep, look. So it has an extra little pedal at the front down there that sort of like locks the rear brake on. There we go. So if you've not ridden a bike with a recluse clutch before, here's a quick demo. You put it in gear, but look, I can let the clutch back out and it's not going to set off until I give it a bit of throttle. A bit like a scooter. And then on the brakes, stop. It's pretty good. Works surprisingly well. And then once you're rolling, you can just use the quick shifter. So if you don't want to, I mean, you don't really need to use the clutch. Now the clutch is still there and you can still use it. If the power's on, so the clutch is engaged, you can still pull that in and disengage it and slip it a bit as well. Let's say you were trying to smooth out the ride at lower speeds, or if you had a passenger. Not that I would realistically take a passenger on this bike. The pillion seat is tiny, but yeah, the clutch is there if you want it. The smart clutch is available on both bikes and quite a few bikes actually in the MV lineup. But there are other differences that you notice jumping off the Brutale onto this. I mean, the first one is the bars. This has sort of clip-on style bars. They're ever so slightly adjustable, but it's the width that's substantially different. They are significantly wider than the Brutale, so it gives you a bit of extra leverage to chuck it around, but I think as a result it feels a touch less sporty because you're in less of that narrow tuck. The seat as well, it's got a different seat unit design, and I feel like my bum is pushed a little further forward, so I'm possibly sat more upright and I can't slide back so much. And then of course you've got that 200 section rear tyre, and I would say it does look very, very cool from the rear, but it doesn't feel quite as nimble on the road. Alright, so having ridden both bikes today, look, they're both incredible machines, super lively, super responsive, very agile, just a bit bonkers as well. Now what I will say is the Dragster, visually for me, is the one that does it. The new LED headlight and back end of the seat unit, you know, it looks great from whatever angle. Love the trellis frame, love the way they've hidden the passenger foot pegs. The spoke wheels add a touch of class. And so for me, this is the one that's like a bit of a showpiece. If you're gonna go and pose at a bike cafe, that's the one to go for. And for a lot of people, I think it's worth the extra couple of grand for that extra bling and finish. But what I will say is that the width of the handlebars, the seating position, and the extra width in the rear tyre, for me, you know, it feels a little bit less sporty. This is very direct and a little bit more nimble. On top of that, you got a slightly more ample pillion seat. Not a great deal in it, but this is certainly slightly bigger. And you save yourself a couple of grand. And so for the rider who doesn't like to stop and show off, then this one's the better choice. But which one are you, a poser or a rider? Let me know down in the comments below.